Are you stuck trying to memorize difficult jazz chords but can't get them to sound right in a song? There is a simple system using 3-note jazz chords that has helped thousands of my students turn chord symbols into music, not just memorize lots of chord grips. So in this video I'm going to show you that system and how it helps you add rhythm and color to your chords so that you can finally play songs that sound like jazz. Let me first show you how these simple 3-note jazz chords work, the foundation behind all jazz harmony. Now once you have these, I'll show you how to put them to use in real comping and even use them for harmonizing melodies so that you can create your own chord melody arrangements. Let's start with the basics. Shell voicings are 3-note chord shapes with the root on the 5th and the 6th string and the 3rd and the 7th, so the chord part on the middle strings. Here's what that looks like with a C major 7. For each chord there are two main versions. This one with the root on the 5th string and this with the root on the 6th string. A great way to practice shell voicings is to play all the diatonic chords in a scale. So diatonic just means the chords that sort of naturally comes from that scale. In this case, C major. Here's how that sounds. And if you switch to the other string set, you get this starting from F major 7, the 4th degree of the scale. Now you might have noticed that the B half diminished chord, also called B minor 7 flat 5, is the same as a regular minor 7 chord, like the A minor 7 right next to it. And that's because shell voicings leave out the 5th, which is the only difference between those two chords. Now luckily, that almost never causes problems in real songs because you can hear what it is from the context. In fact, you'll see this in the next section when we start applying these to a song. With the diatonic chords that you just learned, it becomes easy to play real songs. Let's walk through the first part of Fly Me to the Moon, because most of the chords are just diatonic straight from the C major scale, but there is one chord inserted to create extra movement. And chords like that are called secondary dominants. You'll hear how it makes sense. The first chord is A minor 7, you can play that here, and then to move to D minor 7, well this one is really close, so let's just take that one. Then you get G7, that's right here. And also C major 7, really next to it. And I think that's really important to point out. We're just sort of slowly moving down the neck and you want your chords to flow together, and that's easier if you're not sort of skipping around in different positions. Now F major 7, that's also right here. B half diminished, right next to it. And the non-diatonic chord E7, so the secondary dominant for A minor, and that also resolves. You really hear that resolution, and now we have the lower version of the A minor 7 as well. Can you see how easy this is? And you have the chords moving through the song with a natural flow from chord to chord. You're not skipping around and stressing about finding the next chord somewhere on the neck. Let me quickly talk a bit about the secondary dominant. So in the song you have E7 resolving to A minor 7. And E7 is of course not a chord in the C major scale, but it is the dominant of A minor, and you will often come across dominant chords that are resolving to something else than the root of the key. And it's very useful to be able to recognize them. So another common one would be the C7, so actually the tonic as a dominant, which takes us to the 4th degree, the F major 7, or the 5 of 5, so D7, taking us to the 5, so the G7. Now that you have the chords, the next thing you need is rhythm. Rhythm is everything when it comes to playing chords in jazz, but for many jazz beginners, learning comping rhythms can feel like a mystery. Now the great thing about shell voicings is that they're easy to play, so you can really focus on rhythm without worrying about complicated fingerings. And there's a trick to improving your rhythm vocabulary, and it has to do with how you think about rhythms. Check out this example and then I'll explain. Here's how you should think about comping rhythms. Each one-bar rhythm pattern is like a word on its own. It can sound good, but it really comes alive when you start combining it with other words to build sentences. And that's how great players make their comping flow. They combine patterns and hear longer phrases, just like sentences in a conversation. So here I'm first playing a Charleston rhythm, a rhythm that you can easily use as a riff through an entire song, but here's just for the first bar. Now it's followed by a variation of that rhythm that adds a note to the Charleston. Again, a simple, useful rhythm to have in there. On the G7, the rhythm is not beginning on beat 1, and that creates some tension, which fits with it being a dominant because it kind of needs to resolve. And that resolution brings the rhythm of bar 2 back which is just a simple way to resolve the G7 and close the sentence. Once you start thinking of rhythms like this, you stop memorizing patterns and start speaking rhythm, just like learning to speak a new language. Now you've got some rhythm words to work with, but you can actually go even further with this great trick for shell voicings. I'll show you how to add more color to your chords in a bit, but the easiest way to add variation right now isn't by changing the chord, it's by splitting it in two, bass and chord. And this gives you a lot of new options, and it's especially great for duo comping if you're playing with just a singer or a horn player. Check this out. What makes this great is that every shell voicing already has 2 layers built in, and now you have 3 ways to play each chord. Altogether, just the bass or just the chord. And you can hear this in action already in the first bar. Altogether, and then just the bass, and then just the chord. And this sets up the answer on the D-7, which actually uses the same rhythm as the previous example, but now with a split, adding sort of an extra dimension to it. By splitting the chord, you instantly get a lot more out of the same rhythms, and it's easy to add great variations without learning anything new. Now, let's add some more notes to these chords before we start working on chord melody. You're already flexible with chords and rhythm, so now it's time to add more color to your chords. But here's the thing, don't just chase fancy chord extensions. Be practical. The best way is to start with your basic shell voicings and then connect them to different melody notes that are easy to play. Think of it like this. Your shell voicing is the bread and cheese, and every new note that you add from the scale is a different topping. Each one gives your chord a unique flavor. Let me show you with the A-7. I'll add notes from the C major scale on the top 2 strings, like this. And you can do the same thing with D-7, but remember that you want to think of these as variations of the basic D-7 shell voicing, not a million new grips that you also have to memorize. And if you explore this idea for the other chords, you can play something like this. With all these options for melody notes, you can probably see how easy chord melody suddenly becomes. Let me break down exactly how it works. Have you ever wondered how to turn a simple song into a rich chord melody arrangement? So here's the trick. If you can play the melody on the 2 top strings, you can easily harmonize it using shell voicings. So here's how that works with Fly Me to the Moon, and notice how in the melody I'm sometimes sneaking in a note on the 3rd string, but you'll see in a bit why that still works. And now watch what happens when I add the chords underneath the melody, because suddenly it just all fits together. And here's the thing, you don't need to be too strict about how long you sustain the chords. For this song, it really helps that the melody is moving most of the time. Think about how Joe Pass approached it, because that's important for the next section.
A lot of people think that you're playing like bass notes at the same time you're playing chords, at the same time you're playing melody. And it's not like that. It's an illusion.
And this makes it a bit easier to play the next 4 bars, where you sometimes let go of the chord to keep the melody moving. And you can hear that from the very first chord that I'm playing. And if you're a little bit free with how you play the melody and also add a secondary dominant for the F-7, then you get something like this. So you want to be practical so that you can keep the music flowing, and building from these basic shell voicings help you do just that. Now, if you work on using these for chord melodies of other songs, you will quickly become very flexible and it will become easy to play like this. Check out this video to learn how to use shell voicings for a chord melody of Autumn Leaves. It works perfectly, it's very playable, and it's a lot of fun. Check it out. Learn jazz, make music.